first Nathaniel was quite upset. He'd like bang his head quite a lot. He tends to, if he gets stressed out, I'm not sure, he does tend to beat himself up quite a lot. You know, he gets upset, he'll hurt himself. He would never hurt anyone else, but he'd hurt himself.
Welcome to Share Your Story with Saima. I want to say a massive thank you for sharing your story with me today. So I would like to go straight into it. So obviously I am aware you've got 2 boys that suffer from autism.
Yeah.
So before we start to talk about your children, I would like to know a bit about autism. So what is autism?
Autism is a social disability, and it's basically just a communication problem, really. Obviously, I didn't know anything about it until my boys were diagnosed. Autism is a massive spectrum. Autism, you know, my boys, from what I've known so far, are pretty severe with it, but everyone's on a different spectrum with it. So where one child may not have much speech at all, another child might have speech. It's very much a communication thing, and with autism, it's learning how to communicate in different ways if you haven't got the speech and stuff. Obviously, a child, you start to pick up on it when a child is very young, and you can notice at quite a young age, you can notice socially they don't interact with other children, and they tend to play in their own little world. Even from a very young age, my boys were very like that, and you know, yeah, and they have lots of repetitive behaviours. Yeah. So,
Are there types of autism?
Sorry?
Are there different types of autism?
Yeah, there is. It's like autism is such a massive spectrum. Someone could have just a touch of autism. Like even with because I've got 4 boys all together. I've got an older one and a younger one. They've never been diagnosed with anything, but I can see traces of the autism in them as well. Because like my eldest one's got OCD really badly. He can't just get into bed. He has to do all these rituals before he gets into bed. And in his life, everything has to be in a certain place, certain way. My older son, he's more struggles a bit socially, you know, and he's had a lot of mental health issues because of having to cope with his brothers with autism, you know. And in our household, because we've got 2 of them that are quite severe, life has been so different and challenging for us all, really, you know, yeah.
So obviously I would like to go into about your boys and stuff. So you said you noticed from a very young age they had this potential symptoms of autism. So could you tell me from the start with your eldest, is it the eldest boy that's got autism? Yeah.
Well, no, so I've got 4 boys. I've got an older one, Joshua, he's the eldest, and then I've got the twins in the middle. The twins are the autistic 2, and then I've got a younger son. But basically, they were coming towards their 2nd birthday, and it was actually my husband picked it up quicker than I did, because we found both. The first thing we noticed when they were toddlers and coming up to sort of 2 years old, we couldn't get them to eat any lumpy food at all, and they weren't just being sick; they were being really sick. And so obviously we went to the health visitor quite a lot of times, and they just said you just got to keep at it, trying to introduce the food, make it a bit lumpier, and you know, forever trying to do stuff, but they'd just be so sick, not just a little bit sick, but really sick. They just couldn't cope with the lumpiness in their mouth, you know. And then and then my husband at the time, he was working as a carer, and he was going out, he was looking after a 14-year-old boy who had autism, and he started noticing a lot of the things this 14-year-old was doing, our twins were doing, like the repetitive, you know, picking the sand in the air and just doing, you know, repetitive stuff all the time. And he was the one, because they were twins, it was difficult. I was in a bit of denial at the time. My husband just said, I think that we have definitely got a problem. They need to be checked. And I remember it was just after the Christmas that year. It must have been 2004, because that's when my youngest was due. I was actually pregnant with my youngest, and it was that January. I had and my sister really told me off, because she could see there was a problem. It's difficult when you're there all the time, and when you got twins, you just think, I just thought, oh, it's just a twin thing, they look differently, and yet my sister said, Jenny, you've got to get it sorted. You need to get them checked. She said, you've got a baby on the way, all this business. Anyway, it's funny, because while my sister was staying in that January, I had a health visitor come round to see me, who brought round my red book for my next baby, get me ready for the next baby to come along. And while she was there, that's when I said, look, I'm really worried about these two. And she just spent about 5 minutes watching them play, and straight away she said, yeah, there's a problem there. And that's the other thing. They wouldn't respond to their name at all. So, and for a while we thought maybe they were deaf, and then that wasn't the case, because obviously if they were in one room and they could hear the Teletubbies on in the other room, they'd go running in there because they could hear it. So we knew that hearing was fine, But so it was really my husband that saw it first, and then seeing that health visitor coming round, she managed to get me loads of cancellation appointments for certain doctors, like speech therapists and play therapists, to help the diagnosis. By the end of that January, I had a diagnosis of autism. It happened that quickly, and they started going to the CDC, which is the Child Development Centre in Poole Hospital, and we just started to see, they used to go there once a week for play therapy. And obviously that's where I get to meet some other mums, and I think when they had their final diagnosis, we had to go to the CDC, and then we took them in this room. I remember all these nurses and people that worked there was watching them play and stuff, and again within about a few minutes they said, yeah, you've got a big problem here. But they were so it wasn't like it's terrible. They're like, amazing, they're lovely, they're beautiful. Then they were the cutest two little boys. I had the most cutest babies, honestly. I'm a bit sad they've all grown up now, but they were the most cutest boys, honestly. So everyone's loved working with them because they're beautiful and they're lovely. And so they used to play in the child development center. So that's where my autism journey started, really. From there then on,
Yeah. So just before your journey, what were the actual main symptoms that your husband noticed that thought, oh, okay, right, there is something wrong here, or there's something we need to do?
For both of us, they're very fussy with their food. We couldn't get them to eat solid food at all. Whereas my other two, by the age of sort of 1 onwards, even younger than that, you'd give them like a bit of toast and they'd chew it, they'd love it, they get into it, and they start. Where the other two, we couldn't even get them to do that, And if they did have anything like that, they'd just really be sick. So that was one of the symptoms. And also when the fact that they didn't respond to their name, they used to play in their own. If you go to a toddler group, a kid could come up and just grab the toy off, and they wouldn't be bothered. They'd just go off and play again. But other kids would probably retaliate, say, "Oh, that's my toy," And socially, you could see there was a massive difference in the pair of them when they were playing with all the other children. They just didn't go anywhere near anyone. They just went off in their own little world and did their own little thing. And
So you said the diagnosis happened very quickly, but how did you feel when did it occur to you that, right, okay, there is something wrong here?
I saw so many doctors at the beginning. Now I remember coming out, the first lot of GPs I saw officially, and I came out, and straight away she said, you've got a big problem here. And I just when I got out the car, and my mum was there, and I just sobbed. I was so shocked. These beautiful little boys of mine are going to have this life. I never thought. And even and you think, oh, it'll be okay, we'll be helped. And you never know with autism how it's going to develop. You never know whether it's going to be severe or whether it's going to be. You never know as they get on. It's all a learning curve, the whole thing. You have to go with it and learn as you go along. And like for me, I spent years. My whole life has been children. I've worked with children all my life. When I finished school, I wasn't academic. I couldn't cope with anything like that. I did an NNEB qualification. Went to college so I could work with children, and I was a nanny for like 6 years, so I've loved children. I couldn't wait one day, meet a nice man, have lots of babies, And so I know for my boys what it was like having sort of normal children that didn't have special needs or additional needs and stuff. And then so when I had my boys, life was so different. We couldn't just go out the door. We had to plan everything. The twins don't like doing lots of different things. They like to do the same thing all the time. And when they're really little, if we went to just a normal part to play, they wouldn't. These are the sort of things that have gone into or go into later, the books I've done, because a lot of the things they did when they were little, like going to a park, they wouldn't want to play on the swings. They were looking for somewhere to escape. So like some parks, park opposite us had 3 gates. We couldn't go there because we needed 3 people to stand by the gates, or they'd just try and escape all the time. They thought it was a game, they thought it was great, but that's one thing. The other thing with autism, they're big escape artists. They have to try and escape. Even now, at the age of nearly 19, if you're not careful, they'll just go and run, and they've got no sense of safety or danger. They'll just run into a road without thinking. It can be quite scary. So all my life, when they were little, I've always been quite tense and worrying because I was very anxious to go out and do stuff because I was frightened of losing them. So yeah.
So that's my next question, is that what was life like having 2 boys in the house that have autism?
To be honest with you, I've always been a very laid back person, really. I don't like to let things get to me too much, I loved having my boys, and I loved being a mum, and I just had to adapt to the situation. I think at first I just wanted to try and be like everyone else and do everything, go to everything, but it got to a point. It got too stressful. Every time we went, there was stress. If we didn't have this, didn't have that. We were worried when we got to places, we wouldn't be able to. People that we quite like going to church sometimes. And we even church, we had trouble finding a church to go to that would cope with the boys. And if we went there, the churches couldn't cope with the noise. So, we didn't sometimes in the other places, your normal places to go and play, like those indoor play centres and stuff like that. The boys wouldn't play on the equipment. They'd want to escape all the fire escapes and stuff like that. So, it was, and we used to try to go to, a lot of people have these organised things like Coping with Chaos organisation, where people like me, my family, my boys could go to these places where the kids can just play, and you've got carers looking up, running around for your kids. But with art, obviously it was difficult. When we used to go to these places, our boys didn't want to play with all the carers in the place thing. They were just looking for the fire escapes all the time, and we found it too stressful. So it got to a point we just stuck to doing the things we knew they loved. And all our little routines we have with them are what I put into my books, just making things fun and keeping things the same, keeping things simple. And I don't have to be ambitious. I don't have to do everything like I would have done if my child wasn't autistic. You just learn to just be happy to do the same things all the time, so yeah.
So that goes on to my next question. You've mentioned about some of the challenges that you have faced, but can you give me like a whole round of what are your daily challenges with your boys?
Well, obviously the biggest thing that has affected us with the boys is the fact they don't eat. For years they haven't eaten solid food. It was only really the last year. I'll go into that later, but we spent about 18 years having to liquidize every food they have because they wouldn't eat solid food at all. So every mealtime had to be blended, and for a while they had to have a certain chocolate custard was their favourite, and it had to be ambrosia. And then I had trouble getting the ambrosia. If I didn't get the ambrosia, they wouldn't eat it. And it has to be a certain. Even if they change the packet on it, they'd know they wouldn't eat it. So yeah, everything, and even the colour of the food. If the food wasn't the colour they liked, they wouldn't eat it. So a lot of their blended food was like a bolognese or something that I could blend up was like an orange colour. I could put vegetables in it, but if it was a vegetable that made it go a different colour, they wouldn't eat it. And it had to be blended. So I spent like 18 years blending food. So that's the massive challenge we've had with them. It was only really in the last couple of years. Yeah, I had a problem with their schooling. And about 3 or so years ago, and I couldn't get the boys to school. They'd been happy in this school for ages. It was a special needs school. It wasn't the school's fault. The school was amazing, but it got to a situation where we couldn't get them to go to the school at all. I think because they changed to another building. It's a bit too structured for them, I think. And Mark would be sitting in the corridor, and it got to a point he wouldn't even go into the building, so they kept having to bring him home. In the end, they just gave up, and he was stuck in the house for a couple of months. That's when my friend said, look, you've done everything, you need to get the MP involved. So that's when I phoned up emailed a few MPs, local MPs, just saying I've got a problem. And that's when I got a phone call from Tobias Elwood. Tobias Elwood was the MP, everyone's hero, because he helped with that tragedy up at do you remember that up at London they had that what's it called
Is
they
it
had
some,
you know
was
that bloke was attacked, you know, and he helped one of those attacks on London.
yeah.
He was basically he was involved with that. He helped the
Okay.
bloke that or something. Yeah, anyway, so he was everyone's hero, but he was my hero before that. But anyway, he as soon as he heard about my story, he asked me, he wanted to see me straight away. I went round to see him, met him in Boscombe, and I told him what was going on. He was horrified. His secretary said she'd never seen him so upset about the situation. He was determined to help me. And he was the one that came across this new school they ended up going to, called the Sheeling. I think I can say that because it's a brilliant school. And they started going there. And since they were there, they've been there for about 3 years now. And that's through the whole time they've been there. It's taken them centuries since probably back, when did they start? It's been almost about 7-8 months. They've just suddenly started eating everything. From doing blend all the time, it's been all this time, and suddenly, because they were in the right environment, the right support, suddenly they just started eating. It was amazing. I never thought this day would come, because that's an encouragement to other mums with this autism. A lot of things, challenges you have, take a long time with autism, and it's a proof that even though it's taken how many years since they were 2, now they're nearly 19, and finally they are eating solid food, which I thought that day would never come. So that's for the people out there that have got children with autism, have got their own battles with it. That's just a light. That's a proof that don't ever give up, because eventually they do it. With the right help and right support. Anyway, so Tobias Elwood got my boys into their school, and so he was brilliant. And so that finally they were in the right school, and then it took a few more years after that where a few years they were in that school for about a year, and then eventually because it was getting harder for me on my own at home, they decided to they let me start having them boarding in the week. So instead of having the home every night, they'd board from Monday to Friday, because the other challenge with autism is the fact they don't sleep hardly at all either. So I was up every night and hardly sleep, and they'd hardly slept at all. So obviously having a week where they weren't at home was fantastic, and then they come back every weekend. So that's been happening for a few years now, which has been brilliant. So so
Is it government funded, or is it something that you have to pay for yourself?
It's funded, obviously. We haven't got a penny to, we're quite, money's, that's the other thing with having the boys. Money's been very tight, financially things have always been a massive struggle, for us. Because obviously got the 4 boys, so
there is help out there for children that suffer from autism, but also there's a lot of parental help as well, isn't there, where there's these kind of agencies or schools that are able to collaborate and work together, just like you said with your boys that suddenly started eating.
But obviously they go for a journey, and sometimes things will work for a while and then it doesn't work. But whereas one school might work for one child with autism, it doesn't mean it's going to work with another. So sometimes it takes a while to find the setting that suits your child, And at the beginning, the school they were at was actually, at the beginning, they were brilliant. and they were fantastic with the boys, and even they got to the point they could see they weren't progressing anymore, and they were stuck. They didn't know what to do either, but they were fantastic. I still keep in contact with the school because they were amazing, and it's just with their autism, things had started changing, and they weren't coping in that situation, and they needed to. For me, my biggest battle also was everyone kept saying, oh, you know, they need to be in education, and I kept thinking it's not the education I'm worried about. It's getting them independent, because everything with them they want me to do for them, and you know I couldn't even get them to dress themselves. I've had to, you know, I've had to do everything they want me to do for them. So my biggest thing from a very young age is trying to help them do things for themselves, because like any child, they're so reluctant to do things for you. But with autism, it's like millionfold worse, because you know, and I've got two of them fighting against me all the time, you know, for the simplest things, you know. And the other thing as well has been really hard is trying to get them toilet trained. You know, they're 19, and it was only really in the last year they've both done it really. And then, but with Mark, with his behavioural situation, he can still be quite bad at home. He can play up to me at home with the toileting still a bit, even though when he's at his school, I know he's okay, you know, and he behaves himself, and he doesn't, some of the things he does for school he won't do for me, so it can be quite harder at home, you know. But that's just being a mum. They like to play against their mum, you know, make it harder, you know.
So it seems like they've both got the same type of autism then.
They're very similar with the autism. They both haven't got speech, but they're very similar, but they're also very different, because I think Nathaniel has a little bit of speech now. He'll say a few words, and he loves singing. He sings all the time, and his favourite is Christmas songs. You know, he'll sing Christmas songs throughout the year because he loves his Christmas. Mark is Mark never I've never heard Mark talk at all, but he loves his. But he seems, even though he has no speech, if you keep your words simple, I use a few little sign hands like finish, stop, you know, things like just simple little phrases just for them to understand. And they've also got communication books, and also they have these little laptops where they can point to what they want, and so it makes life easier. Yeah, sorry, I've forgotten what I was talking about now.
Okay, so it seems like there's a lot of equipment out there as well that can help people with autism.
Yeah.
And another thing that I wanted to touch up on, because I've noticed there's different types of autism, because I wasn't aware with autism that they wouldn't eat solid foods. Why is that the case? Why don't they eat solid foods?
They have very strong scent. They're very sensitive with their mouth, and it was a texture thing, I think, as well. And I think it was also a habit they got into as well, because obviously the fact they're eating now and that's not a problem, it proves it's very stubbornness. They got into a routine of doing it, and they didn't want to break that, and it took someone else to push them to do that, you know. But yeah, yeah, and the thing is, most children with autism have food issues. They'll only eat certain food, or so if you see someone at the checkout buying a whole load of the same thing, you can always guarantee that person's probably got an autistic person in their house or child or something, because they want to have the same thing all the time, you know.
Yes.
So, yeah.
But that goes on to my next point. Is about autism and change, going through a transition. How have your boys taken change in general, any type of change?
Change is really tough. They struggle with it massively. Like, you know, when they first went to this new school, it took Mark probably about 8 weeks before he'd even go into, because they at the school was like, they had the houses they lived in, and then there was a school, and then there's other buildings, and it took them ages to actually get them into that school building. They had to do it gradually, where they started in with a desk just outside the door, and every day they just moved the desk slightly nearer to the door until they got him in the door, you know. So everything with them is really, any change is massive. It takes them such a long time to adapt to it. That I think the biggest, you know, the hardest thing for us as a family is probably about, how many years ago now? it's coming about 8 years ago now, we lost our family home because when I first got married to my husband, he had a property we mortgaged, and before I had the children, the idea, my dad said, look, you're moving to your grandmother's old house, and my mum wanted me near it because they wanted to be near the grandchildren, and we were giving up a property to move into a family home to make it into a nursery. That was my dream, and I did start childminding for a while. But when the boys started getting very autistic and things got difficult, I think at first I did have some older children to look after. Then it got too difficult, so I had to stop that job. And then my dad got into a financial pickle and he had to sell the house. So we lost our family home. And then since then, we've had to rent. We tried to go to the council, but so in the last 8 years, we've moved about 3 times. So that has been massive for them. And every time we moved, I've had to keep things very, very simple. And I've said to them, you know, just keep repeating the same thing, I keep showing pictures of the house we're moving to. And I say, we're putting things in a box and we're going to a new house. And I just keep repeating that, showing that this box, we're putting all our stuff into a box, we're going to a new house. And when they're calm, sitting calm, and they're having their dinner or doing something they love, I'd go up and just show, look, that's going to be our new house. And whenever we moved, I'd always have their beds set up first because they love their beds and their duvets. So when they've gone into a house, they go running up to look for their room. Once they found their duvet, they were happy. You know, they'd get their tablet, they'd be sitting on it. So, you know, it was tough for them, but they got used to it. So, yeah, so change is massive for them. And obviously, the other big thing for us during the coronavirus at the moment is about when before the lockdown, they've actually had to move schools now because they're getting up to 19 and they're out of the education side of things. They've had to move on to another residential place, and it was supposed to happen just before lockdown. And they were going to move. They'd all planned it. They'd done social stories to explain what's going to be happening, so they knew what was going to happen. And then it couldn't happen because someone in their home was said they had COVID-19, so they had to stay in the same building for like 14 more days before they could move on to their resident new home. So things kept changing. Eventually, they have moved on to this other place now. At first, Nathaniel was quite upset. He'd like bang his head quite a lot. He tends to, if he gets stressed out, I'm not sure, he does tend to beat himself up quite a lot. You know, he gets upset, he'll hurt himself. He would never hurt anyone else, but he'd hurt himself through the frustration and the confusion. What's going on? Why am I moving? And, you know, even though they show lots of social, Mark wasn't so bad. He coped with it better. But everything you do with the boys has to be planned. Any changes to them is massive. So you have to spend weeks explaining what's going to not, you know, a couple of months just going through social stories, explaining where you're going, showing pictures of what's happening, just so they can sort of slowly take in what's going to happen, you know. And when they had planned that and it changed because of the COVID-19, that threw Nathaniel massively. So we had quite a few weeks where he was beating himself up quite a lot, you know, and so that was quite tough. And obviously since they've been in their new place, whereas they usually come home for weekends, they haven't come home, so I haven't seen them for like 12 weeks now. So that's been really hard because obviously they're coming home, and as much as they are hard work and challenging, I miss them dearly. You know, and at the beginning I did a FaceTime, you know, like with you, talking to you on a video. And the first time I did it, Mark was fine, and if anything, it made him happier. Whereas Nathaniel, when he saw me, he just kept wanting to beat himself up all the time. He got really upset. So I haven't seen Nathaniel for I hadn't seen him for about 11 weeks. It was only last week. It's the first time I thought they've been there for about 10 weeks now. They've settled in. Things have calmed down. Just might be worth, because they've started talking to me about maybe going to visit him and just do a social distance thing just so he can see me. But if he saw me, he wouldn't be able to. He's strong and he'd just want to grab me and hug me and pull me, and so that would never work. So I just thought, look, now things have calmed down, let's try again and have a see him again and see how he is now he's settled a bit more. And I did my first chat with him probably about a week ago, and he was brilliant. He really enjoyed seeing me. But it's so lovely to see him for them. He was happy and he kept doing his twirling around, sitting down, looking at me, giggling. He was so pleased to see me, you know. But it's been really tough because I really miss them, you know, and it's hard for them that the routine of coming home has stopped as well. You know, I can imagine this COVID-19 for all the families out there with autism has been such a massive thing for
Absolutely.
thinking being able to go to school, everything has stopped. You know, my heart goes out to all the families with autism because I bet they've had massive battles with it all, you know, because can't be easy, you know. So,
Yeah, well,
sorry.
that's because it's quite tough in general daily, isn't it, with for people with autism, and then to have something like the coronavirus pandemic where nothing can be done apart from just isolating yourselves, and then coping and accepting that change. I can only imagine what they've gone through. It leads on to my next question. You mentioned that one of your boys tends to hurt himself. What do you do to maybe stop him? What strategies do you use?
Well, it's obviously very difficult because the more you try to intervene with him, the worse he gets. But at the same time, it's good to let him know you're with them. You're there, and he's not on his own. I recognise he's upset and he's stressed. And, you know, for years, I've just have to find those things that I can do to take something's on it. So when he has a meltdown, he's obviously thinking something freaked him out, upset him enough to want to sort of, and his meltdowns can be quite violent. He really beats his head up, his head gets swollen, he has red eyes, it's quite traumatic, and he's so strong now, you know. But I have a few things I try and do, as in a lot of time I just put him in a shower and I just sing him lots of songs while he's in the shower. That often calms him down. And then and also put on one of his favourite movies to distract him. And his favourite movie at the moment is Flushed Away. So if he starts, because you always know when they're about to go into one, when he starts to go into a bit of a meltdown. And I
Yeah,
say, like to my husband, Neil, quick, put Flushed Away on, you know, and he'll put Flushed Away on, and he'll come, and slowly he starts to calm down. But even then, sometimes even with that, it doesn't work. You just have to let him wade it out and just watch him, be with him, you know. And sometimes he'll try and headbutt the walls, and I have to be there with a pillow, trying to stop him from hurting himself too much. It is tough. It's really hard, you know.
yeah. As a mother, how does that make you feel?
That's horrible, you know, having to stand there and watch and I'm just, sometimes I cry at Nathaniel, stop, darling, you know, please don't beat yourself up, you know. I'm just like, you know, and it's quite traumatic because he gets so bruised, and, you know, but you have to learn to just be calm with it. You can't get if I get too upset, it'll make him worse. So you have to, the whole time of it, you just have to stay calm, even though it's quite traumatic thing to have to watch, you know. And he's done it so much lately that, you know, you're looking at him, you think he was a boxer because you know, he's sort of scarred from it, really, you know. And but and obviously when I said earlier about him having to move to schools at the beginning of the lockdown, he was beating himself up quite a lot, and it was the first time, I've never done it before, but that was the first time I said to the staff, look, do you think it's time we intervene with giving him something to help him, as in a drug or something to calm him down?
Right,
And they did give him something, and I think he has been a lot calmer since. You
right.
know, the last thing you want to do is to resort to drugs, and I don't usually agree with the drugs, but it's
Yeah,
better than beating himself up and ended up down A&E. Obviously, we don't want to go near there at the moment with what's going on, you know. So yeah, so
so what age, sorry, is more challenging? Would you say when they were younger? Would you say as they get older?
I think for us it's been as they've got older, because obviously when they were little, you know, we used to be able to bung them in the buggy, or wherever they loved just being in the pram. So if we did anything socially, we probably let them out for a little while, and then it got to time you just put them in the buggy, and they just love being in their buggy, and it's easy to keep them together, you know. But now they're bigger and stronger than me, taller than me, and they do tend to try and pull me around to take me to things and ask for things, you know. And I have to be careful because they are stronger than me, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Did it impact on your relationship at all with your partner?
Well, we've had our ups. It's been. I think the going out and about it became so stressful, just trying to get up and go out together. And it got to the point, I said like at the beginning how I tried to just carry on as normal, do like what everyone else does, with everything. And it just got to the point, I don't want to do it anymore. It's too stressful. Not where the kids aren't happy to go out. They don't want to go anymore because we get too stressed out as we're going out the door. So that's why we got to the point where we just stuck to the same routines and the same things they like, just to keep everything calm. And to be honest, it got to the point, I'm not, the boys like to go out every now and again, but it's only visiting all that, because I spent years and years when they were little where my husband's had to work, and I've only ever had very little respite, and and I spent years in all the school holidays where my boys were stuck in for like 6 weeks. We couldn't go out. My husband had to work. We had a little bit of respite, occasional days, but that wasn't very much at all. And so we were stuck in the garden for 6 weeks most of the time. So I've had like 16, 17 years, and I couldn't go out with them. It's too dangerous on my own, So we spent so many summers stuck in the house with them. It's only since in the last 3 or 4 years, they've had that residential placement from Monday to Friday, that we've started to get a bit more normality in the holidays.
Yeah.
And this last, the 12 weeks of this, since they've been stuck at their home, even as much as I miss them, it's kind of been like a holiday for us. We've never had this massive break from them. I've been able to have so much sort of time with my other 2 boys, because obviously when they're home, my whole attention is on the twins. It has to be, so they get pushed aside so much, through their childhood, and now when the boys are there. But yeah, so it's really tough.
And what are your other children like with the twins?
Yeah, they're quite different, really. I think Josh has got, my eldest, he's got a really good relationship with them both, and they adore him, and he's just, he loves to try and make them laugh and stuff like that, and yeah, he gets on. And Jonathan loves him as well in his own way, but I think he finds them more annoying than Josh does, because he says, why do you have to keep coming in my room all the time, and do that. I said, but it's hard to tell him not to, and but luckily my boys are quite nice like that. I think we like to just be together, like even in this these weeks where we've been stuck in the house. Like my son, he's got his PS4, but he'll always bring it downstairs, so he's doing it downstairs with us, so he's not on his own, which is good, really, because you don't really like your teenagers on devices up on their own, not knowing what they're up to. So yeah, we do like to be together, but it's for those 2, it's been, life has been very different to any normal family, really, because there's so many things they've missed out on because we haven't been able to go to it, and all those summers where all the other kids were down the beach enjoying themselves, and you look on Facebook, people having lovely holidays, and my boys are stuck in the garden. But it was lovely recently, because I said to my youngest one recently, he's just turned 16, and I said, oh, did it really upset you that we were stuck in a lot, when you were younger? And he actually said to me, he said, do you know what? They were my favourite times, Mum. I remember them just being brilliant times. So all that worrying that they were stuck in wasn't actually that bad, because he obviously has good memories of it. So, but I think I'm quite a big kid, really. I love to do. I've always made sure I've had a big paddling pool in the garden and stuff for them to do. We're always doing lots of silly things, so I think that sort of makes it a bit more fun,
Of course. As a parent, you're going to have to look at strategies to cope every day for not only yourself but also all your children, and it must be quite tough for you. But according to studies, parents of children that have autism has an increased amount of stress daily. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, very much so. We've got the stresses that you have with autism in the family is massive, because obviously, like example, when I was a nanny and I had children that didn't have additional needs, you didn't have to plan. You could just go out the door and do stuff. Like I nannied in London for a few years, and we used to go on the tube. We just do like, what should we do today, kids? Let's do this, and they're like, yeah, right. With the twins, you have to plan everything. You have to like, right, you know, you can't just jump up and go out. You have to plan everything before you go out, explain what's going to happen the next day before we do it. So yeah, you have to be more structured with things, you know, and it is much more stressful, definitely, you know.
Did you ever feel that you just want to give up at all? Was there ever a time where you felt, right, you know what, I can't do this anymore?
I did go for a bit, but when we had to move the house the first time, I went through a bit of a difficult stage because we had an incident where one of the twins got out the front door and ran all the way into the local town on his own. And when I obviously miraculously, I chucked when I realised what I bunged all the boys in the car, realised which direction he would have gone in. We just zoomed up the road. I managed to find him hovering in and out the road. And when that happened, and all the emotions and traumatic time of having to move house with them, which I wasn't expecting, I think I did have a little bit of a breakdown, as in it got to the point I was crying all the time. You know, I just got to the point I couldn't go out, so I didn't want to go out. I was happy. I just wanted to be at home all the time. I didn't want to do anything social, you know, so we couldn't even find a church to go to that could cope with the boys. Do you know what I mean? So it was just like life was really, really tough, really tough. So I've had, you know, it got to, and when I went to see my GP eventually, she just said, well, you've had to juggle all this on your own for such a long time, and it gets to the point your brain just can't balance it anymore, and you're gonna feel like you just want to, you know. And it was a tough time, but obviously she put me on antidepressants, and it did calm, and it did help for a while. And you know, but I have had emotionally, I have been up and down, and I still struggle to this day. I still struggle because you know, and I think when we start talking about the books in a minute, I think that doing my books has really helped me with my depression as well, because it's made me have to go out there. I've had to communicate. I've had to go and see people, and doing the drawings and the illustrations and just writing my stories have been really therapeutic for me, and it's helped me massively. So yeah, but yeah, emotionally and psychologically, it does have a massive impact on you. You know, because the emotions you have to deal with autism and the whole family is so different. Having to deal with your son beating himself up, to having to deal with all the challenges you have, like having to toilet train your son at, you know, and Mark's the worst one for, he does lots of smearing. So sometimes at the weekend he'll be home, and whereas Nathaniel is independent, he'll put himself on the toilet. Mark's not so great with that. He'll make a mess and just wipe it everywhere, and there's so many things we've had to deal with over the years like that, and like they're beating himself up, having to deal with, and the impact on my other two boys. My oldest son has had he couldn't cope with school at all, with what was going on at home, and you know, and he got very almost suicidal at one stage because he was getting bullied at school. But he's like me, he's not very academic, so he really struggled. And yeah, it's not till he's been going to college recently that he's so much better. And he obviously, we went down the route of the doctors, we got people to help him, and he got a lot of help. He's so much better now. But mentally for all of us, it's been massive, you know. And I think it's like even my youngest, he's showing traits of having OCD and stuff like that. And to me, I don't know whether that's a learned thing or whether it's, you know, he's got a bit of a sign of autism himself. It's difficult to know. But I did go and have him tested once, and they seemed to think it was more of emotional for him than it was a problem, you know. So, but yeah, so emotionally with all of us, it's been massive. It's big, you know. Life is massive for all of us. Being a parent is so much hard work. Even though you love your kids, and you know, I've always wanted to have children. I loved kids, but when it's your own children, it's so different. There's so much pressure on you. And there are good times as well, even with the autism. But when you have got the autism as well, you've got so much more to think about, so many more hurdles and challenges you have to deal with every day. And So it gets to the point, it does get on top of you, and it does get hard, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the positive things that has come out of this is the fact that you've published some books, haven't you? So tell me about your books. What are they about?
Right, I've got my books here.
Yeah.
This is my first one, which is My Amazing House of Autism, and it's basically from a sibling point of view. That's one thing I find with autism, when you've got the other kids in the house that aren't autistic, the siblings from, you know, and a lot of them are called carers, and because they're in a home where things are very different. I think that with the siblings, they always get forgotten about. It's like when my other two used to go to school, and all the funny things the twins do, especially not going to bed at night and being very noisy, the restless night, it doesn't just affect me, it affects all my boys. You know, so they'd be going to school in the mornings, feeling really tired and drowsy, and obviously the teachers, they just didn't understand why they were tired. You know, it's difficult. People don't really realise the impact those kids are having to deal with at home. The challenges I have, the same challenges for them, but yet they're young kids. Do you know what I mean? So, my story is like my other two boys telling the story. This is My Amazing House of Autism, and all the funny little things their brothers do. You know, what can I say? I'll read the first little bit.
Yeah.
Natty cannot see, but they are very different. You cannot see, but they are very different to me. They never get tired. They do not sleep much at all. They shriek, they shout, they flap about, they throw duvets down the stairs. And then there's a bit about how we never go to the park to play, as Natty and Matty always run away. And that's the sort of thing, we didn't go to the park much because this is what happened, you know. And then it talks a bit about their food, not eating lumpy food, and then about routines everything's done by time. Time for dinner, time for this, keeping things simple is so important with autism, you know, keeping your routines going. And the bit about the poo, because when you've got kids with additional needs, it's often a situation you have to get used to, and you joke it off, you don't think of it much. It's just one of those things. And it, you know, Natty, you know, it says here that Natty and Matty are not very good at using loo. I've even caught them playing with their poo. It's just it's just one of those everyday occurrences with autism has to deal with. I've made it fun, I've made it colourful, just a what a house of autism's like, basically. The colours, and there's me and my boys in the background. There you go. That's actually one of the routines we do. We have a little that might become a book eventually, because all my other books, where in my first book, My Amazing House of Autism, it talks about everything's done by time, everything has to be routined. I suddenly thought, oh, maybe I could sort of do more on that, you know, as in bringing in the everything's done by time. So I thought, why don't I do, when I was a kid, I used to read those Topsy and Tim stories about the twins, you know, and this is a bit like that. It's Natty and Matty, the autistic twins. Everything's done by time, and all the stories are what we do as a family, you know, like beach time. You know, we don't do it so much. We do go to the beach, but we can't go on the beach so much because they're bigger and it's harder to. But when they were little, we had we went to beach time, and how when we were down the beach, they do the same thing every time. Mark was run from groin to groin, and when it's time to finish, they flop right straight to the ground, because that's another autism trait that's very common. If they don't want to do something, they'll just flop to the ground. And it's learning and little ways how we count down, like to help them move on to the next thing, keeping things simple and understanding. Like they don't want to get up, so suddenly you have to say things like beach time finishing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Beach time has finished. You make it into sort of a game they understand, and it's learning all these little phrases you use when you've got kids like that. Do you know what I mean? And then there's also party time. And the party time is how we do our parties, and it's not Natty and Matty's birthday. it's their other brother's birthday, and it's trying to make but it's trying to help them with no speech and understanding, to help them understand that it's not always going to be their birthday. It's their brother's birthday, but we make it fun for them as well, to help them understand that, and how we always come down the stairs together and sing happy birthday, make them part of it. And a typical thing with autism, this is how different the boys are with it, is the fact that he has a party, he has his friends around for a party. My Natty loves being with everyone, and he'll do the dancing with everyone. He's quite happy to be in the room. And Mark, he'll just sit at the top of the stairs and watch it from a distance, because he doesn't with the crowd. He wants to hear it and see the lights, and so really with the autism, Nathaniel liked to be quite sociable, where Mark would just go to watch from a distance, and then my other I beat on, and my latest one recently is forest time. And we're lucky we live near the New Forest, and this is the forest walk we do all the time. And how there's one bit in here, typical autism thing that I've already mentioned before, where let me find that page, of when we're walking on the gravel path, and we then turn right, walking between more trees, bushes, and very muddy ground. Squelch, squelch. Once we tried to go a different way, but Natty and Matty flopped straight to the ground. They always want to go the same way around. So that's another bit of autism, how things are different when you go for a walk with them, when you're doing all these normal things. And the fact that another bit where a dog comes running towards them, they freak out, they put their hands on the ears, and slowly calming them down, saying, right, doggy, finished now, let's go, keeping things simple, helping them understand and cope with that the doggy's okay and he's gone, he's not going to jump up. Then mummy will say, big dog finished, time to go home, so they know that's finished and moving on to the next thing. So these stories, are just like, they've all got traces. It's keeping things simple and all the little things we do. And I'm just starting, I've written a story for Christmas time as well, so I'm hoping that'll be ready by, I want to try and get it done by September, so then it'll be ready by Christmas. But so.
I mean, I see you've got a passion for writing, but it's also you're using your experiences with your boys and using it to promote yourself in terms of how to work with children that have autism, and that you are able to do normal things, whereas some parents feel, right, you can't do this, you can't do that, whereas in your books it seems like it's clear you can, but it's just be different.
Everybody with autism probably have their own routines, their own things they do, but that's okay. Don't worry if you can't do everything like everyone else does. It doesn't matter, as long as they're safe, as long as they're happy and you're happy and you're chilled. In some ways it's safer to do the same thing all the time, especially when you like my two, because you try and do different, you're just going to put them in a dangerous situation anyway. Because if my boys don't like it, they'll just try and run away, or they'll flop to the ground, they'll put themselves in danger. They're keeping things simple and the same, it's fine. But luckily, we were blessed enough. None of us, I think my husband and I've been married for like 21 years now. We've never had a holiday, but we are blessed for the fact we live in a lovely area where we've got the New Forest with us, so we've got lots of places we can go. That's lovely. So we try to adapt it into our routines, with them. But yeah.
I can see, obviously, you've been through so many experiences, but it's amazing how passionate you are with the way you not only talk about it, but obviously I can see it in your books as well, which is going to go on to my last thing, which would be, what advice would you give to parents that have children that suffer from autism?
Just to remember that autism is a journey, that they are as special and as amazing as everyone else. They're just a bit different, and life is always going to be a little bit different, but different is fine. Everyone's different. None of us are the same, but I love, having the twins. They are just so amazing. They've taught me so much. I think they make you a better person for it. You know, they're such a joy, and yeah, don't stop trying. You know, don't stop doing what you want to do. You know, you've got to have things for you as well, and you know, try and you know you're going to have your difficult days and that, but just push forward and try and be positive with it, you know. And one thing I've learned having my boys from the word go, because of them, I've met the most amazing people along the way who are just amazing. All the carers, all the people, the schools I've met, they've just been so lovely. And everybody that worked with my boys have said how amazing they are. And they are such a joy. I wouldn't be without them now. They're just amazing, you know. And yeah, they give me so much joy, you know. Yeah, my love for them is amazing. I don't think you understand. I know you love your kids, and I love my other two boys amazingly, but the love you have for my autistic boys, it's I think because they're still very vulnerable. When your children are little, and then they grow, when they're little, you're more protective over them,
Yeah.
you know, when they're little, because they're more likely to hurt. When they get bigger, you sort of lose that protective love so much, because you know they can look after them, they're fine, you can sort of relax a bit. With the twins, you're still, there's a massive love and protection because they're very vulnerable, and you have this amazing love for them. But I would never be without them. They're amazing. I think all those parents out there, the other thing is, you have to do your routine. The routine they do at school, not necessarily going to work for you at home, because like my boys are very different at home from when they're at school. The school can get them to do things so much more than I can, so I just have to bear with it and do as much as I can on my own. And if it doesn't go quite as the same as school, don't worry, as long as they're happy and they're safe, you've got your own routine. You know, I think it was quite tough when I was young, when they first, because like any mum, you're worried, oh, am I doing the right thing, am I doing, and I'm just thinking, you know, you get to the point, you know, you have to do what's best for you to cope. There was no right guidance of how to look after an autistic child. You think, I worked with children all my life, and I think all the training I had before, nothing can prepare you for having autism in the family. You know, it's a learning curve, you know, but you know, just try and stay positive with it, you know. And yeah, I've had my ups and downs, but you know, just stay strong with it, just enjoy your children, and you know, yeah. share your stories like me, get it more, you know. I think the biggest battle for me throughout this autism journey also is not having enough support and respite, and the struggles I've had to get help has been massive. And I think that's the other reason why I've done my books as well, because you know, the dream is one day that whatever money I make will help go towards helping every family get the right respite they need. You know, that's my dream. No one has to struggle like we've had to, you know, because families with autism, they need that support, they need that help, you know. Yeah, and just to to help with the mental health, help with everything else that comes with it, you know. And yeah, don't give up. I think they're all amazing, and stay strong. Always make sure there's always someone out there you can phone. There's so many different autism support groups and Autism West websites, and you know, I started up, unfortunately in January, I started up a support group, because after all these years of trying to find a church, we finally found a church that's amazing. They've got a sensory room and everything. We started going there, and they've let me set up first Saturday of every month. I was doing a sensory session for local families with autism, and it was going really, really well. It's very well. Lots of people were coming, and it was really, really well supported. But obviously, because of the corona, it had to stop. So I'm hoping eventually one day that'll come back. But yeah, just for all the other parents, there's always someone out there, you know. Yeah. And I'm on Facebook. If you ever want to chat to me, you know.
No, of course, you know. I'm sure there'll be after obviously your story being shared on my channel, there'll be many parents that will reach out and maybe even take something from you as a positive, because most families that I know of only have one child in their family that suffers from autism. And I'm saying most, but there's probably a certain percentage that there is more than one. You've got two, and you've coped pretty well with it. Yes, you've had experiences, but look at you today. You've actually used it to empower other people and yourself as well, which is, I think it's amazing. And I want to say a massive thank you